Hey there and welcome. Gosh, we have an interesting one today. Lots of drill down lectures that give you a lot of detail about resume, about LinkedIn, about your job search in general, about interviewing, about reaching out to that decision maker and really making a direct influence. But today we're going to give you a lecture really about the 7 basic areas that you have to look at to really create a winning job search. To me, a winning job search is one where you have choice. At the end of this job search, we're looking for the possibility of having multiple offers, certainly having multiple interview sessions with various different companies so you can begin to think about not just what offer might I get, but what offer might be the right one for me and where could I really add value, what would I enjoy. Let me share my screen here and we'll come over. There we go. Welcome. Come a little bit larger here. Welcome. So today is 7 steps to an effective job search. Each of these steps, understand you have to do a lot more work behind each one, but we're going to cover the basics today. We have different lecture videos both on my Facebook and my YouTube channel, which will give you a deep dive into each of these areas. If you've not seen me before, John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker, resume and LinkedIn guru as well. Of course, here's my book, Self-Recruiter Changing the Rules. I should mention, I am a big believer in changing any rule that does not work for you. So if that works for me, fantastic. Love that rule. That doesn't work for me, oh my gosh, that rule is meant for somebody else. Great book. You can check it out at the New York Public Library. Of course, it's on my website and Amazon as well. Now, a few other things that will help you before we dive into all of today's content. If you have not really redeveloped your LinkedIn profile, in my view, your LinkedIn profile has to be the polar opposite to your resume. My view of a resume is a single sheet of paper that makes them jump out of that chair. Oh my gosh, get them in here, get them on the phone. I have to speak with them. That's the resume's job. But to me, your LinkedIn profile serves a different purpose by being the polar opposite. How do I take that single sheet telling of my story, bring it as, say, the essence or the backbone over to LinkedIn, and now that's the skeletal system. I have to add back all the layers of interesting story, not the dull stuff, until I've got a full, real 3-dimensional sales brochure all about you. So if you need to work on yours, you can use my video as a step-by-step tutorial. It is right on my Self-Recruiter website, halfway down the page. You can see me large, the slides large, whatever you want. Over on LinkedIn itself, you can click on my articles to get to some articles that'll help you how to not avoid wasting your time, how to make sure your resume is not resume roadkill, and how to supercharge that job search itself. Well, if we've experienced a layoff, I think we know what happens. We begin a suffering process. Oh my gosh, I got cut. I get those calls all the time. I got cut. I'm out again. There's a suffering that begins after we get that notice, after that layoff. Different type of suffering. A lot of people I've worked with are suffering in their current work life, been suffering in their current work life for a long time as different companies have doubled and tripled the workload. The pressure has kept increasing, very little compensation increases, and yet there's really no way out. That's a different type of suffering. You're going to have to carve out time to make it all happen. I've got a dear friend and a close client right now that is in this same process, and they're juggling multiple offers and still another interview on the way. And they're in one of those environments with all of this pressure, absolutely no time. But when your back is finally up against the wall, suddenly we find time, we make time. Mostly the suffering on being laid off comes out of this concept of being the bottom 10%. This probably most famously comes out of GE, but a lot of companies are like this. Every single year, they stack rank everybody in the organization, and the bottom 10%, no matter what your performance, are cut. Boy, does that create great motivation to run a little bit faster than the bottom 10%. I got to run a little faster, a little faster, a little faster. But boy, if we get cut, whether that was the reason or not, we tend to feel like people look at us with this label, bottom 10%, bottom 10%. You know what? Some great people aren't working. There are some people that probably need to sharpen their skills and everything else that are not working, but there's some great people not working. You cannot let that label stick to you. You have to just essentially push it aside, get over it, and not let that be the weight that drags you down. Now, today is really about becoming a self-recruiter, as all my lectures are. How are you going to become this person that takes control? Well, today you're going to focus the lens of self-recruiter onto the 7 areas we'll talk about. How do I move those forward? How do I make sure I'm doing work in each of those areas to create an effective job search? Just understand the bulk of transforming into a self-recruiter means you have to begin to think like a recruiter, a little bit of a Sherlock Holmes, a little bit of a detective. You're going to begin to network in a very different way, utilizing it to exponentially change things. And then also, of course, keeping the one eye on that toughest competitor imaginable. You know, there's 4, 5, 6 people, we would be scared if we saw they were going after that job. A lot of times we'd like to see the job, go after it, and just get the job. Of course, it really doesn't work that easy. We have to think about what everyone else is doing, and they're sitting home hitting that darn button over and over and over again. And, you know, that doesn't really work well for us. It leaves us in a pretty unhappy place. So, again, another chance that we have to get over it. So let's go to a question that starts off today's discussion. What are you doing? What are you doing about your? What are you doing to manage it? What are you doing to control it? How are you managing the timelines? What? I have to do all that? In my view, you do. In an effective job search, we have a lot to accomplish in our normal job search activities. And, you know, even the brightest among us, if we're doing anything wrong, we may be keeping a few lists, those kinds of things. That's not really effectively managing. That's kind of being stuck in a rut. And we need to think about how we're going to get out of that rut and maybe work in a slightly different way, simply changing the equation of diminishing returns by changing the rules. Now, you never agreed to these rules in the first place. Yes, it's a system by the way I might do things, but I don't like the concept of it being a law or principle or something that's allowable or possible. Ooh. Bristle at those verbs there and that verbiage. So I want you to think about the usual, customer, expected, but I want you to think about the opposite, the unusual, unconventional, unexpected, and how that's going to bring you to some problem solving that will bring us to some moments of clarity. Here's the 7 areas to focus in on to make a really great winning job search. We're going to bring these a little bit bigger. We'll put the focus over on these. I'll still be here with you. So first off, you have to know yourself. You have a brand to market, a career brand to market forevermore. You have to know yourself and know this product. Not, I could do this, I could do that. Who cares what you could do or what you might want to do? You have to present yourself as the authority for whatever you're going after. They're not looking for a chance to give you a chance. They're looking for the right one to solve their issues. This begins with us knowing why you could be more valuable than the next 5 or 6 people that want that job. How are you going to do it? So yeah, we have to think about who is our competitor, who are the best competitors, and how are we going to beat those individuals, no matter how sparkly and shiny. Second area we have to focus into is knowing your target market. Yes, we have to understand our target market. We have to understand it from their perspective. Who would benefit most by hiring me? Who really needs to leverage my background, my skills? Understanding not only where you desire to go, but who would really desire to have your skill set. That is really crucial. So we have to know ourselves. We have to understand the target market. This is how we begin to create some alignment. And next step, of course, we have to sell our assets off. Yes, your job, in my view, is to teach them how to select you. Now, we talk a lot about this in terms of the interview, and of course, interviewing is coming up in this list as well. But really, it's your job in all of the outreach process, all of the approach process to sell our assets off, to teach them how to select us. And let me be clear, if you would like to work within the HR department and you're contacting the HR department, guess what? You are contacting the right department. If you would like to work within another department of the organization, in my view, you're contacting the wrong individuals. You're contacting the individuals whose mission in life it is to rule you out. And that's not because they're bad people. Absolutely not. We just don't understand the challenge. First off, they have a great many things to do beyond just the concept of what you think HR does. Yes, they do facilitate the hiring, but the only persons they actually hire are HR individuals. The rest is just facilitation. And from my perspective, again, they don't possess the deep knowledge of that area that they're hiring for or trying to facilitate the hire for. I'd rather you bypass and go directly to the decision maker. That's part of also teaching them how to select you. Besides, of course, what is actually in our message? How do we present ourselves? To me, you can't sell your assets off unless you can be equal to every other person. I don't care if that's the CEO of the company or the person that cleans the CEO's office. I'm absolutely equal and by first name to every other person that I speak with. Never speaking up to anyone, and of course, never speaking down to anyone. Then we have to prepare our resume. We have to prepare our resume to sell our skills and tell our story, very likely in a different way than we have in the past. You know, in the past, how people would generally value you, they would look at the resume and they go employer title, employer title, employer title, education. By the way, usually about 2 or 3 employers and titles for time relevance of skills. Doesn't mean I don't want to see the rest of it, but those are the ones I pay most attention to for the time relevance of skills, glancing down at the education. And all of it is my opinion. Oh my gosh, I hope my opinion of those companies or your titles or that education is very similar to yours. Otherwise, I'll come up to a different value conclusion about you. What you need to do is change the whole story on the resume. Tell the story that positions and lifts your brand. If you need to work on that and understand how we are this product, you need to take a close look at the resume renovation lecture, where you'll discover the only 2 reasons you ever get hired, the only 2, is assuming you are capable or qualified. By the way, I don't hire people because they're capable or qualified. Don't mishear that. I wouldn't hire anyone that I didn't believe was capable or qualified. But that's not the decision piece. That's a foundational piece. There should be no one in my discussion that doesn't meet that criteria. Why are you interesting? What makes you tick? The 2 reasons I hire you is chemistry above all other things. That's number 1, assuming I think you're qualified, capable, those kind of things, foundational. And number 2 is confidence in you above all other things in chemistry. And the interesting and tick question goes a lot to telling and selling that part of our story. It's part of how you take control of the discussion about you. The rest of your background, and you can go into the resume renovation lecture for all the details of how to do this, you're going to have to do a deep dive interview to uncover your real story again, the one that you've forgotten, not the one that's on that dull old resume that doesn't work. Then filter all of your story content through a singular lens. This question of why is it going to be the very best business decision they make today if they choose to hire you? Much more details in the full-length resume renovation video right over on my YouTube channel, right over on my Facebook. It'll help you quite a bit. 4th area we have to focus in on is all of our other marketing materials. Now, resume is probably the primary, most important one, at least for the start of the discussion. But very quickly, number 2 is your LinkedIn profile. My view of your LinkedIn is very different. Most people tend to approach it where their LinkedIn has very little story. There's, oh my gosh, there's a few titles, few employers, there's nothing here. And then somehow we have this really heavy, weighty resume that no one will read there either. I think you have to reverse that whole concept. Single sheet of paper on the resume, watch the resume renovation lecture, full 3-dimensional sales brochure with lots more rich, delicious content on the LinkedIn side to help close the deal in their mind. These are all marketing materials. You have to sew it all together with what we put together in the cover letter, how we're essentially verbally wrapping up our assets as a present. We're going to talk about that pre-cover letter email coming up too here. And that cover letter, a lot of times we write a masterful one, if we did write a masterful one, and we go, oh, I love that. I love it. Copy and paste it right into the email. What? We're in a world where no one will read. Let's not lose sight of that. I have to say that at the public library when I'm lecturing there all the time. Okay, so we're in a world where no one will read. I can't just paste the whole cover letter. They'll see this wall of text. They'll tune out. But if it was masterful, I bet you the first paragraph of that cover letter is really phenomenal. Maybe that first paragraph can become the pre-cover letter email with a little reference, oh, my full cover letter is attached. Maybe it's so sharp it will lure them into opening your cover letter. That's the pre-cover letter email. Signature block. You open up a new email to send someone an email. Is it blank? You don't have a signature block. I don't care what device. I don't care what software. I don't care what environment. Every single one of these email programs takes a signature block. Even your mobile phone takes a signature block. So let's put these things in there. At the bare minimum, it should say Best John. Here's my title. Here's my or if I'm not working, positioning title of what I typically do. Here's my phone number. Here's my email. What? I have to put my email in my email? Oh, no. For you, I can hit the special key. I can toggle. I can copy just for you. Yes. Attention to detail. This is a demonstration of your follow-up and how you'll be to work with on projects. Don't leave out information. By the way, do you know how many emails I have back and forth with various people that don't bother to include contact information? How am I supposed to contact you? We're supposed to just ping electronically forevermore? Those type of attention to detail. I hope you close that email signature with something that motivates them. Connect with me on LinkedIn and then stick in your address line. So every business email that ever leaves your hand again travels with your sales brochure. Oh, what was their background? Click on your full sales brochure. That's the signature block. Leave behind. Now, if you've ever been in sales, that will not be a surprise to you. That is exactly what it says, a leave behind. So I know we're in a pandemic world these days. We're probably doing it Zoom or Meet or something remote along those lines. Sure, of course, absolutely. On occasion, we're going to see people in person. When we do see people in person, that's a leave behind. But even if you were having a virtual meeting, you and I could have a virtual meeting, and then at the end of the meeting, I could still leave my leave behind by sending it to you electronically. Oh, Jack, Jim, or Jill, what an amazing discussion. You know, I have an extra little piece I'm going to send you just after the close of our call today that has some other interesting angles to my background that I think could be advantageous for you. And the leave behind, by the way, is an additional selling tool. This person has to walk down the hallway or Zoom to another meeting where they're going to have to share and try to sell you to somebody else within the organization. This leave behind is going to make their job easier. So I want you to think about what you can do there. Personal branding, all part of how we're going to put the story together. So everything we're talking about in terms of resume, LinkedIn, and cover letter, everything else, you have to carry that across every single piece. So think about all the aspects that you touch that is messaging, that represents you. That also includes shares, posts, update, and even the social media piece. If you're confused over social media use in your job search, be sure to watch my career evolution lecture. That's really the part 2 to LinkedIn. Once I have the great sales brochure, how do I put together a social media marketing campaign to position and sell myself? Well, let's get ready to rumble after I have a little sip of my coffee here. We have to start some effective outreach. If you want an effective job search that is not clicking and sending to HR. By the way, I feel very strongly about that. And I know some of my clients will click and send to HR. I just hope the ones you click and send to HR are not jobs that you really want. If that's a job that you really want, that's really important to you, I hope you follow the process that I outline. And by the way, that's outlined in very specific detail in the LinkedIn lecture. So I won't repeat that all here, but do watch the LinkedIn lecture. Again, right on my homepage, halfway down the page, suffolk.com. So effective outreach is going to be a combination of outreaches. Rarely does just one avenue work. I have to think about potentially emailing them. By the way, that is not sending them a message through LinkedIn. I'm talking about email right into their own email box. Very, very might include voicemail. Oh my gosh, right into their voicemail? Yes. Live calls, because maybe they could interrupt my trying to access their voicemail and actually answer the phone. And of course, effective outreach includes continual, endless networking. Networking, by the way, is being the most interested person in the room, getting the other person to talk so you can extract usable, actionable information out of them. But you know what? There's going to be so much noise, so much minutia all around you. You're going to struggle to hear the clue through the noise. A couple years back, before pandemic, I'm out to eat with my other half and about to get myself in serious trouble because I'm sitting at the table, we're eating, and I'm listening intently to something that they're saying. And then suddenly I'm compelled to shush them. And I'm like, shh, which, it does not go over well because 2 tables behind me, this is a packed restaurant, 2 tables behind me over my shoulder, I heard these 3 girls talking about using social media in their job search. And I just had to hear. My hearing's about what you would expect from my seniority, which means it's really not quite as good as it used to be. I get in those noisy restaurant environments, and now I understand what all those more mature folks used to be saying that I could never quite get about why they were having difficulty. But how could I hear through all this, listening intently to my other half, how could I hear these 3 girls talking about social media in their job search? You don't have to be some crazy listener, but you do have to retune your brain. Your brain will tap you on did you hear that? And then I shushed. I listened. I actually did not get any good conversation out of what I listened to, but I did get a great story to tell here. Hear that clue through the noise, which is very, very important. Your networking can happen across a great number of areas and directions. So be thinking about all the different ways that you could be involved in some sort of a conversation, even if it's just in line or at the park or at the movies or really almost anywhere, but you're going to have to be ready. Next area, the 6th area to focus on for an effective job search is the social media marketing component of how we get there. This requires us to build out a great resume that sings our praises on a single sheet of paper, in my view. Transform that into the 3-dimensional sales brochure, more detail, more visuals, more excitement. Closing the deal. You are the best thing since sliced bread on the LinkedIn side. Then we use a social media marketing campaign of shares. I can go out and find articles that talk about my industry, the players in the industry, the challenge, the roles, all sorts of things. I could go find books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, about all the different things that I should have read or would read if I were on the top of my game. Events in the next 30, 60, 90 days. Yeah, I know they're primarily going to be virtual these days, but fantastic. Events, they already have a website. All of those things are potential social media marketing elements that says you're living and breathing your career. Same thing as letting them look over your shoulder to see what you're reading, doing, sharing, attending. And they go, wow, dynamo. I'd like to hire a person like that. That means we're going to spread those shares across our LinkedIn, certainly across our Twitter if you'd like to be hired. That is so important, by the way, to have a Twitter and to let your LinkedIn shares flow to Twitter seamlessly with one toggle, even on the free version. It's so important because a lot of organizations have simply stopped posting jobs. They're getting 2,000 or more resumes sent in, and I don't have someone to read 2,000 resumes. And they've already learned to think like a detective. They can go to Twitter just like I can. Give me any industry, any position, any level, a few minutes to think about it. I can come up with 4, 5, or 6 words. Oh, not to find someone capable, qualified. Oh my gosh, dime a dozen. It's like cat hair in my mouth. We're not looking for that. We're looking for the best of the best of the best, whatever that is. Okay, not brain surgery. Whatever the role, whatever the position, whatever it is, the best one of those. What would they be reading, doing, sharing, attending? Oh, it's a very short list if they're on the best of the best list. You need to be doing those same things. You also want to consider what platforms to use. You may use Facebook. Not for most people, but I do have 2, 3, 4% of my clients that use Facebook for career. It takes a very high degree of self-editing, not sharing any of the fun stuff, but using it as a vehicle to boost your brand value instead. Instagram, very likely, especially if you're in creative, but there's other ways to use it as well. You can probably manage 2, 3, maybe even 4 social media platforms that might help boost your brand in your job search. Social media marketing, I know it's so scary. Perception is reality. We can't get away from it. We live now in a world, it's no longer acceptable just to be good at what you do. Acceptable in a vacuum doesn't really help you. You have to be extraordinary And you can't do it in this vacuum alone in the forest where no one can hear it. You have to manage the perception of that. You simply change reality by beginning to change perception, which is a series of improving your resume to tell the correct story, let the wrong stuff fall off the resume, tell that great story on LinkedIn up to the crescendo, make sure all of your surrounding information that's in all of your messaging, your cover letters, your email, all supports what you've built. And then your social media shares flowing across 3 levels of network on LinkedIn begin to shift value about you quite easily. By the way, these are my numbers from last month. Last month, 11,847 direct connections. I know that's a lot. Don't get wound up over that. I'm a public speaker. It's not so difficult for me to get connections. But 3 levels out, that gives me a pool of better than 21 million people. Information is the new currency. The more information you have access to, more likely you are to be able to leverage it to your benefit. So watch that LinkedIn lecture to understand how you extract information out of LinkedIn that can help you. Watch the career evolution lecture to understand how you can seed information to LinkedIn and other platforms through your social media sharing that also influence the value of you, change the perception of you. All these shares together begin to tell a story of you and begin to shift how people think about you. Make sure you take advantage of everything we built in on LinkedIn side. LinkedIn video right on my website, selfrecruiter.com. Final area we have to focus in to really create a winning and effective job search is interview preparation. Now, I call it interview intervention because I think we need an intervention. Someone literally needs to stop us before we get to that next interview and really do all of the wrong things. And of course, I have an interview intervention lecture right on my YouTube, right over on my Facebook, and lots of deep dive preparation there. Really, we have to prepare ourselves for the interview, which is not getting dressed. We all have to get dressed. If I showed up on camera the way I typically dress, which might be a 5-finger shoes, a pair of running tights. I've got some whatever on the top. I'm usually out exercising. If I show up here that way, I don't think anyone's going to listen to me. They're probably going to question. It's like, who's this guy? Why are we listening to him? You have to fit what they have in their mind for the product, not just dress for it. But of course, you have to fit the visual, and then you're going to have to embody that with everything that comes out of your mouth, because it's your job to teach them how to select you. Now, before the interview, on the interview piece itself, and there's lots more in the interview intervention lecture, of course, the marketing materials have to be ready. We have to prepare the answers to the questions. Why is it that we think we have to go into some interview cold? Interview preparation means write down every dirty, nasty question you think they might ask you or might challenge you on. Oh, besides the good question. Yeah, write those down too. And for every single question, craft your answer now. You don't have to wait for the moment. What if they accused me of this? Well, John, you've never worked in this industry. I haven't. And I use agree but disagree if they challenge me and I don't like what they said. I haven't, because I have not. I can't pretend I did. But I'm sure you'll meet a lot of those candidates in the other folks you might talk with. What I bring to the table is something very, very different. And here's why I'm going to be the best one for this role. It's your job to make the case. It's not your job to capitulate. And don't lose sight of the fact that they would not waste oxygen on this discussion if they didn't think, oh, maybe, well, I'm going to have to ask you this. They're waiting to hear your brilliance in these answers. Of course, interview offers a opportunity essentially for us to sow the seeds of value or doubt about all the people around us. In this case, we want to essentially build our value in what we say about ourselves, but also maybe cast some shade at potential others they might see that may seem perfect on the outside, but probably have some underlying problem. The details of how to do that, I teach right in the interview intervention lecture. Please watch that one. It'll help you. Now, be ready to impress. The interview checklist. We're going to run through this and just have you think about a couple different things here. We have to think about everything that happens during our interview. That's good, bad, or ugly. what went well, what didn't go well, what went poorly. Did I avoid talking about something so important? That's managing our interview process. We're going to have to think about it's a selling opportunity. It's not simply a Q&A. In fact, I'd like you not to answer questions. You heard that right. Go to your interview and don't answer questions. Well, we're going to use the device of the Q&A to really give answers like a politician. You may ask me this question and I give you that answer because I've chosen strategically to use that question to position and sell myself with a story. That's a choice you have to make because it's your job to teach them that you're the right one. Be persuasive. That's your job as well. Demonstrate commitment and energy and passion, drive. Beyond anything else, you're going to have to demonstrate that you're ready. Not for them to give you a shot or a chance, because we don't like to give people a shot or a chance. We really want to roll the dice on someone that we think is going to deliver something spectacular back to us, maybe even something that we can't quite put our finger on. I'm not even sure what I'm going to get out of you, but I sense it's going to be something very, very different. Those are the 7 steps to the effective job search. Each and every step requires a deep dive into it to improve that resume and make sure it sells and sings. By the way, you heard me say no one wants to read. If I am reinventing a client's resume, no secret I work with clients. If I'm reinventing a client's resume, there is not a single sentence anywhere on the resume. Why would I have a sentence on a resume in a world where people don't read? We must learn to distill down to concept communications. Then we have to take that same style over to our LinkedIn to make sure it positions, sells, and removes the work of reading for the reader. They just absorb it. Make sure you have some continuity in your communications to make sure your outreach steps, all the surrounding pieces, your email message, the attached cover letter, all of that has to work synergistically with those two. And of course, in my view, you need to get right into that decision maker's ear, which rarely is in HR unless you like to work within HR, and prep properly for your interview, because it's a date. It's a date. And as much as it's really about you, it's about them before it's ever about you. So let's understand that even in that process, you have to go in ready to stroke their ego and get them to fall in love with your skill set. Those are the 7 steps to an effective job search. Do the really great work on each step to make them most effective. There's plenty of videos on my YouTube channel, Self Recruiter, that will help you. And of course, my LinkedIn video is right on my Self Recruiter website, halfway down that page. See me large, slides large, whatever is best for you. Thank you guys for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. We'll come back center stage to say goodbye. And we'll see you guys next week.